Next week we'll see the result of the by-election in Richmond, sparked by MP Zac Goldsmith deciding to resign from the Conservative Party over Heathrow expansion. But despite Heathrow and noise pollution being the official reason for the contest, the Liberal Democrat and Labour candidates are clear that on the doorstep, Brexit is the main concern in this constituency, where 72% of people voted to remain in the EU. Well, I took a trip to Richmond and I started off by speaking to Zac Goldsmith, who backed to leave, and I asked him whether he could really run as the anti-Heathrow choice when all the main candidates are in opposition to a third runway.
You could have any candidate from any party and they're all going to be opposed to Heathrow expansion in this constituency. The issue is not just about passive opposition, it's about who's going to win this campaign. And there is a reason why the Heathrow villagers, whose homes are going to be destroyed if it goes ahead, are knocking on doors for me. They've never backed a candidate in any election before. There's a reason why all the anti-third runway campaign groups, who've been assiduously apolitical for years, are knocking on doors for me, publicly endorsing me, taking a risk in doing so. And there's a reason why Heathrow has pointed their finger at me as the main obstacle. I am the person who is most likely to see off this threat, and people know that. So if I get a big green light from my constituents, despite the kitchen sink having been thrown at me by the Lib Dems, that will be a big mandate, no matter how big the majority.
Are you trying to pull the wool over voters' eyes a little bit here, though? Because the Conservatives aren't running a candidate against you. You've had Conservative MPs out campaigning for you. You're just the de facto Conservative candidate, aren't you?
There is a reason why there isn't a Conservative candidate. I'm very happy there isn't. But
because they don't want to split the vote?
It's not that, actually. It's because the local Conservative group, all the councillors, all the association members, collectively and individually wrote to the party centre and said, even if you put up a Conservative candidate, we're going to back Zac. That would have meant the entire party would have to have been expelled from the party. It would have been the end of the Conservative Party in this part of the world. Now, I love that they did that. One, it means there's no Conservative candidate. It doesn't test people's loyalties. But two, I love the fact that local Conservatives feel as passionately and strongly about this issue as I do. They're willing to be expelled from the party, damaging their careers on principle, and that is a wonderful thing in politics. It's also very rare in politics.
So if you say that you're not the Conservative candidate, will you take this opportunity to rule out ever rejoining the Conservative Party?
I haven't just said I'm not the Conservative candidate. I am not the Conservative candidate. I am the independent candidate in this contest.
So are you going to stay independent?
Absolutely. I don't believe people should cross the floor without going back to their electorate in a by-election. I can absolutely assure you...
That's a bit of a wiggle room there, though, isn't it?
Not at all.
If you have another election, you could be...
I can guarantee I will not be asking people to take part in another by-election. I don't do this for fun. No one likes elections. They're not fun.
How about a general election?
Horrific things normally. They are things designed to get you elected to be able to do the things you want to do. That's why I'm standing in this election.
What about a general election?
I mean, you've shown me a politician in the world who can talk 2-3 elections ahead. I'm not going to do that. I've got a massive campaign on my hands. I've got a massive challenge for the next week. If I'm elected, I will be the independent. I'll be the independent all the way through this parliament. Who knows if I even stand in the next election. It would be the height of arrogance to start putting this one in the bag and working out what I'm going to do at the next one and the one after that. I'm just not going to do that.
So the door's still slightly open then to rejoining the Conservative Party?
I could join the monster raving loony party in 5 years' time. I mean, I'm not thinking ahead that far. My job is to get elected now, send a message to government and win this campaign.
Speaking about how you'll handle the government if you do get elected again, you of course voted to leave the European Union. What do you make of how Theresa May is getting on trying to deliver Brexit?
Well, I have said, I don't think the government should be bickering with the judges after the ruling we had a few weeks ago. I don't see any upside in that at all. I think this is an issue that should go to Parliament, but I would caution Parliament against trying to block Brexit. I don't think, incidentally, there's any prospect of that happening. I mean, you could send 15, 20 new Lib Dem MPs to Parliament. It's not going to stop Brexit from happening. I think the leading Remain campaigners in Parliament, people like Hilary Benn, have made that very clear. That the issue now is what kind of Brexit, how are we going to, what role Parliament will have in that process. And I think Parliament should have a role, of course. I was a parliamentarian. I hope to become one in a week's time. I think Parliament has a big role to play.
And what's your view on where we should end up? Should we be in the single market? Should we be in the customs union?
Like you, like everyone watching this programme, I mean, it is frustrating that we can't see the details of the negotiations. The government's got its cards close to its chest. That is frustrating, but it's also right. The government should have its cards close to its chest. As we repeal and repatriate the laws that are relevant to Britain but based in Europe at the moment, they will go through the same level of parliamentary scrutiny as any other legislation, and I hope to be there to take part in that. I have a particular interest in environmental rules and regulations, for example. But the final deal has to involve good access, but it's a spectrum, but good access to the single market combined with more control over our borders. But there is a tension there, and it's for the government to work out the best possible deal. But I think Theresa May made a catastrophically bad decision in relation to airports. But I think she's an evidence-based person. I think she's a level-headed person, and I think she and her team will do a good job.
But she shouldn't be fighting the judges on Brexit?
I don't think so, no. I just think it's a time-wasting exercise. I think it's the wrong look for government. I don't think there are any really strong arguments against it.
Zac Goldsmith says that this vote is all about Heathrow, but for his Lib Dem rival, there's a bigger issue at play: Brexit.
We actually started our campaign talking about Heathrow, but as we went around and we were talking to voters, and what we found was Brexit was the thing they really wanted to talk about. People are really concerned about the future for this country once we've left the EU, and they're really anxious about what's going to happen next.
And what position are you standing on? You're effectively saying that the referendum should be rerun.
No, but that's not what we're saying. What I've said in my campaign is that if Article 50 comes to Parliament, I will vote against invoking it. And the Article 50 decision happened after the campaign started. But what we really want is, once it's clear what terms we're going to leave the EU under, what it means for free trade, what it means for freedom of movement, once we're clear about all of those terms, to put that to the people in another vote so that they get a clear choice between the actual terms of leave and remain.
So it is another referendum in effect?
Yeah, it's a second referendum, but it's not rerunning the first referendum. It's very much the next step.
It's more about blocking the first referendum? Not
at all. It's about making sure that we've carefully considered all of the implications of leaving the EU, and that we're making a considered decision.
Now, I'm a bit confused because you did write a blog post previously where it was a slightly different message. You said, Britain's leaving the EU, OK, I accept that. I don't think that we should rerun the referendum.
So I wrote that blog post before the Article 50 decision was made, and that was at the time when we didn't think we would have a vote in Parliament on whether or not to remain. So, I mean, I've actually been completely consistent. I want us to remain in the EU. That's what I really, really want. And if we can't do that, then at the very least we need to remain in the single market. Nothing I wrote in my blog post contradicts that.
Well, it says here Britain is leaving the EU. OK, I accept that. And you're saying you want to remain in the EU?
Absolutely, I want to remain in the EU. There was nothing in my blog post that contradicts that.
You accept that Britain is leaving the EU, but you want to remain in the EU. For me, that is a bit of a contradiction, isn't it?
I don't think it is. I mean, it's one thing, I personally really, really want to remain, but the country voted to leave. So, that's where we're at. The country have voted to leave, but I still think it's in our best interests to remain. So that's what I will be fighting for if I win this by-election.
So accepting the EU referendum result surely means accepting that Britain's leaving the EU, but you're saying that you'll vote against Article 50.
As I said, I wrote the blog post before the Article 50 vote, before the Article 50 decision in Parliament. So at the time I wrote the blog post, we didn't know that there would be an option to vote to remain.
How much of the pressure are you feeling ahead of this by-election? There's been lots of talk about a Lib Dem fight back, but this is the moment that everyone's going to be focusing on, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not thinking too much about the implications. I'm just working really hard on this campaign. I'm doing everything I can to help us win it. I've got a good team around me, got loads of volunteers coming from all over the country. We've got a really, really positive vibe, and we're just going to do the best we can.
Do you worry that if you lose, then all those council election victories, all those parish council votes will be ignored, and actually people will be talking again about the fact that the Lib Dems are simply not doing well when it comes to the elections that really matter?
I think we'll have to wait and see what the result is on Thursday. I'm not thinking about what will happen, after that.
The battle for Richmond Park is seen as a two-horse race between Zac Goldsmith and Sarah Olney. But don't tell that to Christian Wolmar, who is the Labour candidate.
So I hope you'll be supporting us?
Absolutely.
Oh, right, thank you. Right, we'll be knocking on your door. Thank you.
Well, I can't give you any tea.
That's all right. That's all right. I'll survive without the cup of tea. But if I get your vote, I'll be very pleased.
You will get my vote, sir.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Well, you are Labour, not Conservative.
I am Labour. I'm absolutely Labour. I'm not Zac.
Let's be honest, it's a two-horse race. You haven't got hope, have you?
No, I think the key point to understand is that there's an awful lot of people here who believe in Labour values, and they're very pleased to see us here, and they'll be voting for it. So,
but there's not enough, though, are there, to get you over that winning line?
Well, we have to see that on the day of the count, don't we? I can tell you that the reception I get on the doorstep is absolutely wonderful. People realise that we're offering an alternative that neither the Lib Dems nor the supposed independents are.
So what do you think this referendum is really about? Is it about Heathrow or is it about Brexit?
This is not a referendum. This is a by-election that is not about Heathrow, because actually all three main candidates agree about Heathrow. We're all opposed to the expansion. So all sorts of other issues have been coming up on the doorstep. And crucially, the key one is Brexit. And that's what people want to talk about. And it's very clear that they're not in agreement with Zac Goldsmith, who has supported leave and continues to support leave and wants to get out of the EU as quickly as possible, whereas the constituency are very worried about it.
So do you think that there should be a second referendum?
Well, there's a long way to go. I think, first of all, we have to look at the parliamentary process, and there must be, at some point, a vote in Parliament. Now, if they try and put forward a single sentence Article 50, I think that's unacceptable. We have to know in Parliament what is being voted upon and not just kind of trying to rush through something and giving the executive, Mrs May, total power over what happens.
So would you be prepared, if you become MP, to block Article 50?
I'd certainly be prepared to vote against a single line Article 50 because it would just be unacceptable to pass on all that power. But I think it won't come to that. I think that what will happen is that the government will have to present some detailed proposals to Parliament before Article 50 is enacted.
So if you're saying that you are prepared to block a single line Article 50, that's not the position of the Labour Party or Jeremy Corbyn. Do you think that they've got it wrong?
There are people inside the Labour Party who are absolutely supportive of that. There's different views in the Labour Party, just as there are different views in the Tories.
And you've got a different view to Jeremy Corbyn?
Well, I've got a view about Article 50 that I think is very clear, that we should not vote on a single line Article 50. And Keir Starmer, who is the Brexit shadow minister, has said precisely the same. We need to hear more details about it. What would happen, for example, if the idea was that all the workers' rights in the EU would be dispensed with as part of the negotiations? Clearly, we couldn't vote for that.
If you had to rate Jeremy Corbyn's opposition to Theresa May on Brexit, what would you give him out of 10?
Jeremy Corbyn has made very clear that he thinks that the government's performance on Brexit has been appalling, that they are not defending workers' rights, that they're prepared to write off all sorts of things that we see as absolutely essential in maintaining.
So what's your number then? Go on.
I'm not going to, it's not my business to kind of give scores to my leader. I hope you'll give me scores about how I'm doing in this by-election.
As well as Zac Goldsmith, Sarah Olney and Christian Wolmar, there are of course some other candidates in the Richmond by-election. This is the order that they appear on the ballot. Howling Lord Hope is running for the monster raving Looney Party. Maharaja Jammu and Kashmir are running for the Love Party. David Powell is running, Dominic Stockford for the Christian People's Alliance, and Fiona Sims is running as an independent.